Okay. Well, I can't follow those two very easily, but what I want to talk about is do networks facilitate collective action, something I've been working on a long time. We all know when individuals following their own interests lead to outcomes that nobody really likes, there's a collective action problem that's involved there. Collective action reflects that conflict between individual and collective rationality that lies at the heart of political science and concerns with governance. How can we build great cities and productive farms from dismal swamps, or save dismal swamps from the cities that encroach? Thomas Hobbes, over 3 centuries ago, thought that coercive government power was the only way to do this. It took 2 centuries before John Stuart Mill suggested that enlightened self-interest may actually be a way of substituting for this. And another century after that, before Ostrom and others has looked into the kinds of institutions that can promote collective action that range from the Hobbesian centralized agencies on the right to the Mill type of agencies on the left. And you can read it. Informal policy networks, I would argue, are perhaps one of the most important, at least studied of them, because of the support they provide for others. The basic idea is really simple. The bonding relationships that you see on the left here are essentially actors like A, who likes to have friends who know each other. B, on the other hand, likes to have friends that don't. Bonding relationships are on the left are the ones that, of course, I knew that were going to be the ones that my research would show were true. They provide trust and commitment. They are involved in many of the relationships and are good for looking at problems of prisoner's dilemma, public goods and common pool resource problems. The bonding on, I'm going to have to stop this or I'll This is you guys try this. I could read it and I could stick to my timing, but that wouldn't be quite as interesting. Bridging relationships, on the other hand, are good for information flows, so we'd expect they'd be good for kind of coordination problems, matching, battle of the sexes, and things like that. So I was all set in my research to find out about bonding relationships. So the first thing I was doing was field studies, and I looked at actors in 10 different political arenas, but I found there that actually it wasn't bonding, it was bridging. That the most important thing in this case was people looked for actors who everyone else looked to, so that they had central coordinators that came out of it. Strike one against the clustering idea. And in another research in a similar setting, what I wanted to see was who collaborated in these things. But again, I found it was really degree and betweenness centrality that predicted collaboration. So apparently collaboration is based more on informational needs than on commitment and the type of things that bonding relationships would be much better for. But of course, these studies are hard to really get at the data, and they're inaccurate in a lot of ways. So I next moved to the agent-based modeling world, where you can control everything. Here in this simulation, people play 2-person prisoner's dilemma games with each other. There's a preset network that they learn about who does well and who doesn't do well, and they select strategies that do well from that. Again, it wasn't bonding, it was bridging that was more important in dealing with this. In this case, it was the size of the sample, and in particular, how many people that you learned strategies from that enhanced the amount of cooperation that one saw in this evolution of cooperation that came from this process. Of course, agent-based modeling doesn't really get at the human motivations in that as well as other things, so we turned to experiments. The experiments that we looked at was on the voluntary dilemma, where people play an iterated prisoner's dilemma, but they can decide to play or not to play and pick different partners in that. So we had 14 subjects in each session. Subjects could choose who they wanted to play with in each of these rounds. If both subjects wanted to play, they would play with each other. We're going to look at the evolution of cooperation in this case in the next 20 rounds. The blue circles are the actors, with the size of the circle telling how well they did in the end of the game. The red lines are cooperation decisions with the partner. The black line is a defect decision, and when there's no lines, there's no game that's being played. So you can see as this game goes on that the red lines increasingly become clustered in the different clusters for each of the different sessions. The black lines get kind of of pushed away into Nashville, as my partner TK on called it. So at last I had here, I thought, a situation in which it was clustering produced cooperation. But no, when we looked a little further, we actually found the cooperators clustered. And that was the driving mechanism. There was no effect on cooperation, but the strategy that they used to do this was quit for tat. You be nice to everyone until they defect, then you just quit and you don't play with them anymore. That turned out to be the most important strategy. The players that played that did best, and it explained very clearly why you actually had these clusters. So again, I didn't quite get what I was expecting to get out of this. Clustering really hasn't shown up in my research. Now, I'm sure that it really is true that our basic beliefs about social capital can't be wrong. It's just that I looked in the wrong places to find it. But if this is really going to be the century where we do actually make progress in understanding collective action and networks, we really need to try a diversity of methods like this, only we need to find better areas where actually clustering does promote cooperation.